In an industry stuffed with marketing bullshit, empty promises, and Chinese-suited liars, one woman's had enough. She knows what it's like to have the wrong clients, no money, and no time for fun. But she also knows how to fix it. And on the Business for Superheroes show, she promises to tell the down and dirty truth about business, sales, and running away with the circus. Here's your host, Vicky Fraser.
Hello and welcome to the Business for Superheroes show. I'm Vicky Fraser, and this week I'm interviewing Kevin Whitehouse, who is my accountant and also keeper of the magic numbers. I have invited him onto the show because it's become pretty apparent to me that most business owners don't know their numbers at all. And I am no longer including myself in that group because I have Kevin on my team, but it is a potential disaster. So Kevin, thanks so much for coming on the show. Can you tell my listeners a bit about what you do? Because you're not just any ordinary accountant, are you?
Hi, Vicky. No, I don't even like to use the word accountant, really, because people's perceptions of accountants is a mixed bag, from anything back from anybody who's watched the 9 o'clock news where the accountant wanted to be a lion tamer, but that's an old joke if anybody's seen that. But no, I try to avoid that sort of subject because for me, the accounting industry is in a bit of a crisis because they're very poor at marketing themselves. They're very poor at actually conveying what they really do, the real value of what they do. Because underneath it all, if you understand your numbers within your business, if you actually really use that data, you have untapped and hidden money in your business if you could just learn how to do all that. And it's not the accounting and the tax and all that stuff, which is what we do, the compliance. It's the utilizing of the data that you already have that's so important.
Yes, exactly. So why, how can we use these numbers? Apart from obviously to keep ourselves out of prison and to keep HMRC off our backs, how can we use these numbers?
Yeah, obviously there's the compliance side of things. So we all have to submit something to somebody at some point, and generally speaking, it's a personal tax return for you as an individual, or if you've got a company, it's a company tax return, and for most people, it's both, and lots of other bits and pieces as well. And so that's what I would term as compliance. In other words, you have to do something by a certain date, and therefore, you comply with all the rules and legislation, and the rest of it, and that is what your accountant should do for you and look after all that stuff. But that is kind of, if you like, a byproduct of the information that you have, because you have to keep records so that you can get that compliance stuff done. Well, if you're doing the record keeping, why not do it for yourself and let the revenue just have what's left over? In other words, the information they can have, because you've got to do that anyway, and utilize that information yourself. So what then happens is you then start to, I suppose the easiest way to do it, to describe it, is you just record what you are doing. And you may be familiar with the sort of terminology of bookkeeping and accounting, and people often get confused and they all think it's one thing. Well, the way to describe it is bookkeeping is recording the transactions and accounting is reporting on those transactions. And just like the old phrase of garbage in and garbage out, the better that information is to then interpret and understand and see what it means to you and your business. So it's about capturing that information correctly. So as an example, let's say, for example, you were keeping a record of your sales, and every day you wrote down the date, and every day you wrote down how many sales you made as a value, and you collected that data for a year. Well, that'd be great because it would tell you what your sales are. But what would be even better is if you split those sales into the different categories that were important to you every single day. You're going to go through the effort of writing the sales total down. So why not describe a little bit about those sales and put them into categories? Okay. So, as a good example to use is a garage, and everybody understands what a garage is. So they might have petrol sales, and they might have shop sales, and they might have repairs from the workshop and MOTs and car sales. Well, they're all different types of sales. And if you started to split them out into those sorts of categories, then you could see how well the shop is doing, how well the petrol's doing, how well the workshop's doing, et cetera, et cetera. And that's just the sort of beginning of it. Yeah. And one of my clients that I was actually talking to this afternoon on a Skype call, they run a holiday theme park. Right. And in that holiday theme park is all sorts of different types of sales, from the ice cream stand to the restaurant to the ticket sales to the annual pass holders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what we've got is a whole series of mini sort of profit or losses. This is the sale for the ice cream. What does the ice cream cost? How much are we making on ice cream? Because it's sold from the ice cream kiosk. And the more we track those numbers, the more we can then test marketing efforts, location of where the shop is, times, of day that things are sold, seasonal trends, etc. And if you want to sort of look at the experts of those is your classic supermarket. Tesco's don't just put a load of stuff on the shelf and then just capture the sales every day. Not only will they capture every individual item, they'll also know when you bought them, what time of day, where you bought them, from whereabouts in the shop, right. Because everybody has an eye line as to where your eyes see on a shelf, and products at the end of sort of aisles sell more, and those that are on sticky out things that hang off the shelf sell more. They're all done deliberately, and then they utilize that data to decide, okay, we've got this new product. Why do we put it here on this shelf? And then test and monitor it, and you'll know all about test and monitoring as part of your marketing expertise. And so it all ties in beautifully.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So I find it quite interesting, considering that I used to hate the whole accounting thing. It just keep me out of prison, and I don't want to know, and I didn't really understand what you could do with the numbers. So that's all really cool. But can you give us an example of how you've helped somebody? Because I know I'm deliberately nosing you towards a specific story now, because you told me the story before. But how have you helped one of your clients before to use their numbers to actually make a real tangible difference to their business?
Now, you're going to have to give me a clue as to which story you're alluding to, because I've been doing the cake lady. Yeah, okay, yes, yeah. Because I've actually been doing this for 30 years. I've helped thousands and thousands and thousands of clients over the years with all sorts of scenarios and all sorts of stories. And I've got some really exciting stories to share about some of the clients who've had real victories. But as an example, my cake lady. Okay, and this was a lady who decided to start out on her own from her kitchen making cakes, and she decided to sell them at the local market stalls, and then she developed that, and she found that a few farm shops would buy her cakes, and her description of her cakes were handmade knobbly cakes. In other words, they were proper handmade cakes wrapped in cling film with a sticker on the thing, and when I first met her, she was writing all the labels by hand.
Wow.
So she'd write the label out by hand and stick it on the cling film and send it off. So there's no fancy packaging of everything. But of course, people liked them, not only because they were homemade, but actually were really nice cakes as well. She just had the magic recipes that were needed to make good cakes. Yeah. That business naturally just grew because she found one farm shop and another farm shop, et cetera. And she literally went from about, probably over about a 5 or 6 year period, from running her business from home in the kitchen to renting a small unit on an industrial park of about 1,000 square feet. And she set up a bank of ovens. She had about 6 or 8 ovens side by side on a shelf. And then she had some bigger mixing machines and some big tables. And she started to employ a couple of people, and they were all doing the same thing she was doing in the kitchen. And you can see the natural progression of that as it goes out. And she called us in because she was working blooming hard, really hard. And she wasn't really making the money that she thought she could make, but she couldn't figure out why. So we had good record keeping. We knew what she was selling and what it was costing, etc. And just looking at the overall sales and the overall costs, we could see, well, we were making a profit. So we took the numbers a little bit further, and we said, okay, let's have a look at the recipes. What cakes do you make? And you wouldn't believe how many cakes one person could make. We ended up with 100, and I remember very specifically, it was 101 different cakes that she made.
Wow.
Because a chocolate round cake, to me, is the same as a chocolate square cake.
Yeah.
And of course, the measurements for a round cake are slightly different from a square cake.
Right.
And so we just worked out all the recipes that she made these great big cakes and chopped them up into slices, and she made little cakes that she could sell, etc. So a whole mass of them, but predominantly they were cake. So we identified all the recipes, and what we did is we put together a little spreadsheet, and we said, okay, here's all the recipes, which interestingly is all in one set of measurements. And anybody who knows about cooking, I'm the worst cook, but some things are measured in metric, and things are measured in imperial, and some recipes are measured in both.
Right.
But when you buy this stuff from the wholesalers, it also is in both. So you've got like a pound of flour and you want, that converted. And so it was really complex in what we had to do. But basically we worked out a formula where we could identify the cost of all the ingredients in their wholesale commercial, sacks of flour and trays of eggs and, vats of butter, because you buy it in big, big quantities. And then using the recipe measurements, calculate the cost per recipe.
Right.
Okay, so it's just a little bit of maths.
Yeah.
But then when we identified the cost per recipe, we could then work out what the cost per cake was. And we even added a time element in it as well, because she knew how long it takes to make a cake. So we just allocated a percentage of time to that as well. So we were able to identify quite accurately the cost of each cake. And then simply you put the sales price of each cake next to it and worked out the difference for profit and then converted that to a percentage. And anybody who's dealing with anything to do with your finances, percentages are your friend. If you're doing price increases, don't put things up by a tenner. Don't put things up by 50p. Don't put things up by a pound. Put them up by a percentage.
Yeah. Because
50p on a pound sounds a good percentage uplift, but 50p on £100 is hardly worth bothering.
Yeah.
Okay. So we calculated all the percentages, and out of all these 101 recipes, you can probably imagine not one of them was the same percentage. Because her pricing structure was, oh, that's a nice chocolate cake. I'll sell that for whatever the price was, £2.35 or whatever. Well, if I sell the chocolate one for £2.35, well, then the lemon drizzle cake must also be £2.35. Not realizing that the cost of ingredients in one was slightly more than the other. And therefore, when we worked out the percentages, some of the percentages she was making 85 and 90% on her cakes. And
right.
Some of them she was making less than 10% on her cakes with no understanding of it. So all we then simply did is took all these 101 prices and said, well, what can we uplift these prices to? So we basically just played with the numbers and played with the percentages and realized that we really shouldn't accept anything less than, for now, 50%. So anything below 50%, we tickled the prices up. Well, as we were tickling those up, we realized we could also tickle the prices up for the others. And we just did it on a percentage uplift until we got everything up to, 50% or more.
Okay.
And
that's 50% profit.
Yeah. We then created a new price list and sent it out to all the shops.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody continued ordering and not one person even mentioned it. Okay. Not one person batted an eyelid. Because in reality, maybe a £2 cake suddenly became a, £2.80 cake. Nobody really noticed. And after all, everybody's busy. Particularly the wholesale, particularly the farm shops. They just wanted cake this week to put on their shelves. So and nobody even read it. Nobody even checked. And she sent the bills in, and she got paid, and carried on. And literally, that one single exercise doubled her profits.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Just doubled, and that, of course, was only the beginning of what we could then go on and do further and further and further, because you could then really go into it and you could 80-20 it and pick your high items and stuff like that, to the point we had some cakes that just weren't worth making. They were just hard work to make. They weren't very profitable. Well, why make them? Them? Just take them off the list and use that time for something else. And so that is an example that you can use just about resetting your prices, because, after all, if you're doing thing A and you're doing thing B and they're all pretty much the same type of thing in your industry, like making cakes. I mean, without sort of, simplifying too much. I mean, anybody who makes cakes is important. They make good cakes, and I don't take that value away. But, surely if you're making 50% on one cake, you should make 50% on another cake. The same as if you're selling one of your products. And then the trick is then, of course, is to then, continually put those prices up and up and up. And you can really, really, that's just the beginning of the journey, as you probably are aware of what you can then do with your prices thereon.
Yeah.
To a marketing person, you could have a field day, couldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. And that's such a cool story. I like that, because that's just kind of, a simple exercise. There was lots of moving parts to it, because there's obviously cake ingredients and stuff, but once you've done it, it's like double your profits. Like, well, that's
and literally double your profits. Not a case of, I think we've made more money. No. We had money in the bank, cash in the bank.
Yeah.
Suddenly, cash flow was easy. Suddenly, the pressure was lifted. Suddenly, there was real cash. And what then subsequently happened? She had an opportunity then to take over the unit next door, and she doubled the size of her premises.
Right.
She bought more ovens. She increased her capacity. She then took on some more customers, and yada 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 yada. You can imagine where that story would take you.
Yeah, that's really exciting. One of the things that I'm quite excited about, because at the time we're recording this, I should say that Kevin and I are about to start working together. By the time this actually goes out, we'll have been working together probably for a month or so. So so I can kind of say this. What I'm quite excited about is finding the leaks in my business where I can plug. Because I bet when you start looking at people's figures, you find all sorts of areas where you can start, where people can start saving money as well, because you just don't realize where it's going.
Yeah, I mean, the typical sorts of savings that people can have, if there is such a typical thing, because obviously everybody is individual and they've got their own individual circumstances, but sometimes just the structure of your business can be important. So you might be trading as a sole trader, or you might be trading as a partnership. That has different tax implications versus limited company. And just spoken to a client yesterday, and he's running a business as a partnership with his wife. And we've concluded that actually the logical step is to turn it into a limited company. And suddenly we've realized there's a little bit of a one-off tax benefit of switching across to a limited company. And actually that's worth about £8,000 to him in tax savings. Now that's quite significant just for doing a bit of paperwork to change and the hassle of opening a new bank account and all that stuff to have a limited company. But it also has many other benefits as well in terms of risk protection and the rest of it. So from a structural point of view of how you structure your business, that is something that is really important. And anybody who is a sole trader or who is a partnership who is running a business really should consider a limited company for the main reason to protect you and your home from risk, but that something could go wrong. None of us want to fail in business, but sometimes the odds are stacked against you. And if something happens that is out of your control, like, for example, a fuel strike, and we have no fuel for a couple of months, a lot of businesses would fail as a result of a fuel strike. Now, that's completely out of control. But if it's in a limited company and you run it properly, then there's a chance that the company may fail, but you keep your house, you keep your home, you could start again. And there's mechanisms to do all that. So that's one important factor. Quite often, going through the expenses of a business, I don't often find, gaping holes, because most people spend money in a controlled manner. And it's easy to say, we all do it. We all go, oh, my mobile phone bill's a bit high, I'll do something about that. But quite often people don't, because they're too lazy and therefore they leave it. And so there's always little bits of leaks like that. But that also has to be balanced with the convenience of, you could spend 3 days organising a new mobile phone contract and save yourself £3.50. You could probably go and earn a bit more than £3.50 doing your job. Yeah. So it's about focusing on the right things. But the key thing would be is to look at the percentages within your figures. And one of the really fascinating topics that I've been working on and learning through all my marketing experience over the last 5 or 6 years, and everything that how we've come together with, is that I've been looking and working with people who are running pay-per-click campaigns. And we're actually tracking the budget on the pay-per-click advertising back to the advertising costs in the accounts and relating that to the sales that are coming from that, so that we can then actually quite accurately start predicting our forecast sales and saying, look, if I spend £1,000 on advertising and I can generate this much worth of business, what if I made that £2,000 advertising? What if I made that £3,000 worth of advertising? And the only thing that then stops you is the economics. Well, get it right in the first place, and it then becomes self-serving. Yeah. So that is where the magic happens, when you start actually looking at what you've done in the past compared to what you could do in the future, and forecasting and taking the information going forward. Because you can play with it on paper. You can sit there and go, well, what have I spent? And we did an exercise the other day where this lady was selling a product that she had manufactured and created, and she was getting in from, I think, Taiwan. Mm-hmm. But she had to buy in a complete shipping container load of these products.
Right.
Cost price was £25,000 per container, but the lead time was over 100 days. So she would send her check across for £25,000 today, or transfer the money today. Yeah. And in about 100 days' time, a lorry would turn up into her little warehouse and deposit a container full of her goods. Right. So we then put together the marketing campaign, and it was an online product. And so the marketing people got all excited and showed us how spending £1,000 on pay-per-click would work, and then started to ramp it up. And within 9 months, we were showing that we could be spending £10,000 on pay-per-click and doing £1 million worth of sales. And everybody was all excited in the room.
Yeah.
Until I said, hold it, guys, but we got a little bit of a problem. We don't have enough stock to meet that demand because we've got 100 days lead time. Therefore, to continually keep those containers coming in so that you've got a container coming in on a regular basis to fulfill that task, you're going to need at least 4. And at the rate you're going, if not 6, and it won't be long before you need 12 containers of stock, so that you've got 1 in the warehouse, 1 going off to the customer, 1 on the ship coming over, 1 being manufactured, 1 just about to leave, that sort of thing. Well, at £25,000 a pop, 4 containers is £100,000. We need £100,000 worth of cash for this business to work. And you've just spent £100,000 on advertising. We don't have any stock. We've got a trading problem. And the business could have gone bust if we got too excited about sales. Yeah. And that would be a classic over trading side of things. So the numbers come from, well, let's have a look, see what you've done in the past and continue that graph forward for the future. And what are you going to do to change the graph, obviously in an upward direction? And in doing so, you've got to be careful that you don't actually cause yourself a cash flow crisis. Because you've been too clever with your marketing and your selling. So sales and marketing people are great, but we've got to kind of control that in a controlled environment. Otherwise, you can actually go bust from doing too well.
That's a really good point there, because it's something that most people won't even consider, because everybody, very rightly gets excited when they have loads of sales, but then they forget to think about, well, actually, can I deliver this?
Yes.
And this is a classic problem that my husband's business has. It's like everyone gets really overexcited. Oh, we've got all this, so we're going to do this. It's like, well, and my husband's like, I've got no engineers available.
Yeah.
And so, it's just like we can't build it, can't deliver it. So that's
which then has massive knock-on effects, because it then damages your reputation. Yeah. Yada yada yada. It causes all sorts of knock-on effects from that.
Yeah. So forecasting, very exciting stuff.
Yes, it's sort of a bit nerdy, but it's a bit like your sort of AdWords campaign. You know it's really important, but it gets a bit nerdy and a bit geeky behind it. But at the end of the day, it's just maths. It's just numbers. It's not some complicated algorithm. It's not forecasting is just a sale less a cost equals profit. Accounting is just money in, money out. What's left is profit. It isn't that complicated, really.
No, and I guess the way you have it all set up is that you don't have to. I mean, I don't have to sit down and with a spreadsheet and work all this stuff out. It's you've found. I mean, how do you do this stuff?
Yeah, how do you do this?
How do you do it?
Yeah, well, basically, just like if you said to a carpenter, how do you cut that piece of wood? He says, well, I've got various types of saws, and this is the best one to do this job. It's a tool, okay? You just need a tool to do the job. And what people... I think, and I've seen this over the years. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. And when I started out many, many years ago, computers were just new. I mean, proper new. We used to have big, big computers with black and green screens, and you had to type everything. It was DOS days. They didn't have Windows. Windows didn't even exist. No fancy graphics. And bookkeeping was done by hand in a book.
Yeah.
It was kept by skilled bookkeepers, and it was a labor of love. It was a proper task that has been around for a very, very long time. And because it was a labor of love and it was a skilled task to do that bookkeeping, and, anybody wants to sort of test whether a bookkeeper is important, go back to good old Al Capone days. Mm-hmm. The bookkeeper was his most important guy. He kept 2 sets of books. Bookkeeping is such a powerful thing. But the introduction of the computer, and even now as we move into the mobile phone, I just press my button on my phone and everything magically happens. Well, it sort of does, but you've got to remember there's an underlying skill of bookkeeping that needs to be, in there. Otherwise, it's all just, very thin veneer on the top. Yeah. And so by implementing a proper accounting bookkeeping tool, and I use a thing called Kashflow with a K, and that's the only software I supply and provide to all my clients. Kashflow is a cloud-based accounting tool that allows you to record your sales and record your costs and do your banking and reconcile things and do your wages and all the things that you need to do. And it does everything that any business would want to do. Then it also introduces the magic of computers in that it provides a huge amount of automation. So you can connect it to your bank account so that it automatically posts stuff in. If you've got shopping carts, it can collect the data from your shopping cart. So as somebody goes onto your website and buys something, that information could go straight into your accounting system automatically.
That's
you can
so cool.
Yeah, that's cool, right? And it really is cool. Okay, and you can do your PayPal account, and you can use it on your phone, and you can send somebody an invoice on a PDF, and in the bottom of the PDF is a big button that says "Pay here," and they press the button on the PDF, and it opens up the shopping cart, and you put your credit card details, and it pays you. And
That's amazing.
Yeah, all of that stuff. Even I've known this stuff for a long time. I go, wow, this is really neat. And when you put it into the right context within a business, and you structure it right, and then you look at the processes behind it, you can make that operation really slick and controlled. And in my book, I call it a 5-step process. And the process is very simple. You've got to put the data in. So you've got to get the data into the system as fast, as economical, and as efficient as possible. And then you've got to check it. And there's a thing called reconciliations, just to make sure that, there isn't mistakes. And every time there's a mistake in the bookkeeping, it'll always be down to the connection between the chair and the keyboard.
Yeah.
All right. It's always us humans that will mess it up. So you've got to check it. You've got to self-check yourself. Then you might have the odd adjustment. You might have some stock, or you might have something that's particular to your business. Most people don't have many, but you've got a little adjustment. Then you can report. And when you've done all the reports, and you can trust those reports, and because you've checked it and you've made sure, those reports then go, oh, these reports mean something. Well, a lot of people go, oh, I've done some reports. No, number 5 is the magic. Interpret them. What does these reports mean to you and your business? What can we get from it? What if we analyze these sales by recipe and tie it back to the sales and see if we can improve the sales by changing our percentages, or or if we can do our pay-per-click advertising and test this and test this. Suddenly now you've got power, because you know that the underlying system is looking after you. And then you go into a forecasting piece of software, which again, we've got access to cloud-based forecasting software. They just actually rebranded it. I just know it's GearShift, but they've just called it something new only this week, so I can't remember what it's called. But GearShift is what I use. And GearShift connects to Kashflow, so that when you do your forecast going forward, it magically brings all the data in, because it's cloud-based, in your forecasting software. So you're updating your forecast, you're looking at your forecast, and in comes live actual figures. And as time moves on, you've got actual to budget comparison. And that's really powerful, because you're sitting here today, we're sitting in May saying, well, what are we going to do in September? Let's predict it. Right? And then let's go out to do it. Well, what if it came true? That tells you that what you plan to do and what you actually did works.
Yeah.
Go do it again.
Yeah. Or that it doesn't work.
Or if it doesn't work, what do you need to change and adjust? Yeah. Even if it worked better, great, you did better. And it's back to the same old testing as you get with the marketing side of things.
And that's so cool, because it just enables you to plan properly, and it enables you to, measure what's working and what isn't working. But how many businesses do you think actually do that? How many small businesses do you think actually do that? Because I can tell you now, I don't, or I didn't before I met you. So,
Yeah. What you mean, actually plan and keep proper books and do the job properly? Okay. Well, I've been doing this. I've been running my business for 26 years. I've been doing this for 30 odd years. I would say 90% don't.
Yeah, and that's bonkers. That's 90% of small businesses that could be, that could be making more money just by looking at their numbers, that could be saving money by doing different things. And that's like crazy. So my next question to you is going to be, because we're running out of time and we could go on like this forever because it's such a cool topic. But my next question to you is going to be, okay, so I bet people are listening and thinking, oh, I'm paying as little as possible for accounting because it's basically a thing that I just have to do. But having listened to all this, I'm hoping that they're now going to be thinking, wow, you know what, this is really valuable, but I bet it costs a bloody fortune. So can you give people an idea of, if they were to sign up with you or a similar accountant who does something like you? Because although you're obviously wonderful and special, there must be at least one other one out there who does similar stuff. So what's it going to set them back to use a system that,
Yeah, I mean...
What will they invest?
The smart entrepreneur will recognize it costs them nothing.
Yeah.
Because the payback for all of this, for doing it properly, is huge. That's the real answer.
Yeah.
In terms of pounds, shillings, and pence, it will be different for everybody. So back to my earlier statement, the thing you've got out there, which is either an advantage or a disadvantage, is the accountants are pretty rubbish at marketing themselves, and they also don't recognise themselves the benefit of putting the right systems in, because they allow their clients to turn up once a year with a Tesco's bag or a Sainsbury's bag full of receipts.
Yeah.
and dump it on their desk in January, ready to submit to the revenue. And therefore the accountant has no chance of even thinking about anything future, because they're already in the future and they're dealing with the past. There's no connection. And then they'll say, well, I'll do this job really cheap. And because the client's going, I don't want to spend any money, And the whole thing is so cheap that the value has disappeared. And therefore the accountant can't deliver any value. And accountants get such a big, huge criticism from business owners saying, well, my accountant's rubbish. He's not inspirational. He doesn't help. He doesn't do anything. Well, that's because you don't want to pay him. And that's because you have got rubbish bookkeeping and you are rubbish at what you're doing to give him a chance to doing that. So it's kind of twofold. That as a business owner, you've got to take the responsibility and go, do you know what? No. Time now to change. Coming in the future, making tax digital, we are all going to have to do this on a quarterly basis and submit quarterly profits to the revenue. That's coming. Okay, as a topic for another day, but that's coming. So we've got to get organized ourselves and get a proper bookkeeping system in place ourselves. The more you do yourself, the less you will have to pay somebody else to do it. Okay. Yeah. The more you want from the system, the more you should pay. So I have, for example, my elite clients who I go and see them and spend a whole day with them once a quarter. They get one-on-one time with me. I go to their premises and I sit with them for a day and we go through a whole bunch of stuff. Do I produce their accounts? Nah. They do it all. Yeah. Because I've taught them how to do it themselves. They want their numbers weekly, daily, monthly, in between my visits. I go and sort of, we tweak them a little bit and we talk about them, but we do the good stuff, which is the interpretation and the planning and the exciting stuff about growing the business because we've got that data. That's really where you should be with your business. You should be, having your accountant as, a key part of your team, like a member of staff, and paying for that. People don't get that, and they're happy just to pay once a year. So the cost, it's going to depend on what sort of business you run, but we're running stuff at £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 a year for the minimums, right the way up to £20,000, £30,000, £40,000 a year for the elites. So it's, you pay for what you get, really.
Yeah.
Does that kind of answer your question, other than?
It does, yeah, because I'm one of the things that I'm always trying to get particularly my superheroes to do is to stop trying to do this stuff themselves, and certainly to stop doing it all at the last minute. So a system like Kashflow would massively help people out, because Kashflow is not expensive, is it?
No, Kashflow itself is you can go direct to Kashflow and you can get I wouldn't get the cut down version, which they do for like a £5 or £7, but the main system is like, I think they've just priced up £13 a month plus VAT. I mean, it's pathetic how cheap.
And if you can't afford £13 a month for something, you shouldn't be in business.
Yeah. No. Actually, if you're sitting, if anybody's listening to this and they're sitting there and going, I haven't done my accounts and bookkeeping for the last 9 months, you got to really seriously question whether you should be in business, because it's such a fundamentally important part of your business. You've got to take responsibility. I mean, one of the things I say to people, you're in business to make money, but it makes sense to take the money bit serious.
Yeah,
kind of why you're doing it. So let's get hold of that money thing and understand how it works. Because it's not complicated. It's sales less cost equals profit. It's as simple as that. Accounting is nothing more than pluses and minuses. You don't need to be a maths master to be an accountant. As long as you can add up and take away, and be a little bit creative, because 1 and 1 does sometimes equal 3. All right, because accountants can do that. It's just a case of understanding what's happening in your business right now by recording it. You don't need an accountant to record your bookkeeping. You can do that yourself. If you can do it yourself and you can understand it yourself, you can then go and employ somebody to help you do that. But you must control and own the system. Yeah. And then you can bring the skill of either that bookkeeper or accountant in to do the advanced stuff, to do the compliance and to help and advise.
Yeah.
Recording the data is easy.
So I'm always baffled when people are like, I don't want anything to do with that. Because even though I have kind of been hands off, I've always been like, I really like money.
Yes.
money gives you freedom. And I've got no problem with sitting here and saying I like money, because a lot of people would be like, oh, that's disgusting. It's like, you know what? Fuck you. I like money. It enables me to do stuff. It enables me to change the world. So anyone who's sitting here and running a business and thinking that they don't want anything to do with the money, I really hope that this has changed your mind. Because it's so important and it doesn't have to be complicated.
I always say to people, if do you imagine Richard Branson? Do you think he doesn't pay any attention to accounts?
Yeah.
Do you think he goes, I'll just put it in a carrier bag and send it off to my accountant once a year? Probably not.
And I bet he didn't do that at the beginning either, because he always had the business head. So
course. Yeah, absolutely. It just stands to just logical sense, isn't it? If you're in business to make money, get hold of this money stuff and sort it out. And it's
and then you can make more of it.
You can make more of it. Yeah, it's not really that scary. It's not really that complicated. It's all.
It's not. It's cool. So on that note, then, with the not scary and not complicated, where can people find out more about you? You mentioned a book earlier.
Yeah, I wrote this book. Called Money Talks, So Why Aren't You Listening? There are a number of places you can get this from. And in fact, I'm just in the middle of working on my website, which you're going to help me just finish off the copy for it next week. Yep. But you can get me at kashflow.expert.
Cool.
That's Kashflow with a K.
Kashflow.expert.
Yeah, kashflow.expert is where you'll get my book. Or you can get me at primeentry.com, which is my company name is called Prime Entry Limited. And primeentry.com is another place that you can find me. So that's the two places you can get hold of me.
Brill. Well, that's awesome. That's been really, really interesting. And I'm sure that everybody listening will have found that interesting, because normally they just get me and Joe drinking gin and waffling. And this has actually been grown-up business stuff, which is amusing.
Grown-up stuff, yes.
Grown-up stuff. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're very welcome. If you want us back, just pick a topic and see what we can talk about.
Well, we'll definitely have you back when this digital tax bobbins comes up, because you can talk everybody through that. But yeah, absolutely, we'll have you back. And in the meantime, guys, listeners, do something about stop sending fucking receipts in a carrier bag to your accountant, because it makes them cry. And go to kashflow.expert with a K, kashflow with a K.expert, or primeentry.com and get yourself a copy of Kevin's book, because it will help you get your head around the numbers, and you can just start sorting things out. Yeah, so any questions, drop me an email and I will probably not answer it because I'm not an expert, but I'll ask Kevin, and if he's in a good mood, he might answer it. Next week, Joe will be back and we will be talking about something exciting and marketing-y. Be good. If you can't be good, don't get caught, and we will see you next week.
Like what you've just heard? Tell your colleagues, tell your friends, send them to www.businessforsuperheroes.com/podcast.